Yes, people, thanks for joining me once again. It's Ads here from GND Media. If you do us a favour, give the video a like and a share. I much appreciate it. Okay, so the war's still raging in Iran. The orange baboon and the monster from Israel are still marauding across the Middle East and causing havoc, chaos and death. And I think for this week, I would like to link this idea that national security, people might only think that it involves things like war. Obviously, in recent times, there's been cybersecurity and obviously like things like espionage. But there was a report out at the beginning of the year that came out kind of sneaked out without much fanfare, and amazingly, it was found to have some parts redacted. Now, obviously, because of the Epstein files, everyone knows what redacted means these days, but basically parts of it weren't released and there had to be a little bit of an outcry to get hold of that information. And fair play to ITV News, they got hold of it and they also did a report on it. Now I'm going to share only a short report. It's almost like their own edit of a section that they've done. I will put in the comments section the full clip, which is about 9-10 minutes long. So this is an edited version that ITV did, and we'll go through it. But yeah, not good, guys. Let's see.
The next, ITV News has seen a classified government intelligence report which appears to show some of the most worrying potential impacts of our loss of nature were not disclosed to the public. Our science correspondent Martin Stew is with me. Martin, talk of nature being a national security risk affecting everything from disease to the economy to even future wars.
Yeah, that's right. Normally, national security briefings are about military threats. This one was about the threat of the loss of nature. It was actually published last month when most attention was on Donald Trump's plans to get hold of Greenland. But the initial report made pretty damning reading. It talked about potential threats to food supplies.
Remember when Donald Trump wanted Greenland, and now that wasn't that long ago, guys. And yet it feels like about 5 years ago, and it seemed crazy then, but we're in an even crazier place now. Unbelievable.
Geopolitical stability and migration. We've now learned that the most serious worst case forecasts were omitted and that there wasn't any indication things had been taken out. They include things like the potential for mass mortality events if pathogens like anthrax are released as we get melting permafrost. Migration to the UK making politics here more polarised and populist. And on the economy, the potential for the annual GDP being 12% lower than it would have been otherwise by 2030.
12.5%, which is one of the extremes.
Yeah, now just a couple of things there for people that don't know. So permafrost is something that we didn't think would ever melt. That's why we called it permafrost. But because of climate change, permafrost is now beginning to thaw. And underneath that, there are some pathogens that we do not want in the world. And one of those that was said there was anthrax. So anthrax is also a chemical weapon that's been used in previous crisis spots around the world. People might know anthrax, but there's also an anthrax that's under this permafrost. But when the ice melts and thaws, anthrax released and chaos ensues. So I just wanted to put that out there. But also as well, they're talking, I hate this sort of talk. They're always relating things to GDP. Yeah. It's just been a metric that we've used for a long, long time. But for those that know about these things, and I hope you educate yourselves as well, guys, GDP is not really a very helpful metric in understanding the health and well-being of a society. And so a lot of people think we should come away from GDP, myself included. So to sort of relate this to GDP is almost like saying, look how it's going to affect rich people's wallets. And the truth is, guys, if we're losing 12% of GDP because of the climate crisis and the risks around climate crisis and the costs involved, with ever increasing catastrophes, then yeah, okay, people are going to lose money. I understand that, and society, most people in society will be hit massively, absolutely massively in the pocket. But that may be the least of our problems at that time, because it could also genuinely mean the collapse of civil society as we know it. So this talk about GDP and how it affects it, I get it within the prism of how people, governments and politicians and that sort of view the world in a capitalist society. But in reality, guys, if we're losing 12% GDP, it means a lot more shit going on other than people losing money.
Scenarios that's modelled in this work, if we don't deal with nature loss, the consequences of that could be as stark as that, is more than double what we saw in the financial crisis.
Now, in the full report that we've seen as sections of, there's also issues around food supply and water shortages that could increase nuclear tensions and even threaten NATO itself.
And what that shows is that actually we should be concerned for our security as a homeland, if you like, to build our homeland resilience, because otherwise we are putting our citizens at risk.
And we can reveal that 25 wildlife organisations, including the WWF and the RSPB, have now written a letter to the Prime Minister after they saw the initial shorter report, saying we need to see action that matches these risks.
I hate to say it, guys, but 25 of the leading environmental groups writing a letter to the government demanding action is not enough for a government to act. Unfortunately, the environmental movement, environmental sectors, even large ones, are tiny in comparison to the lobby groups that pay money and bend the ears of our politicians and our political system. So the idea that 25 environmental groups have wrote a strongly worded letter to the government it's nothing, guys. It really isn't, sad to say.
We've got in touch with the government. They wouldn't put anybody forward for interview to talk about these extra details we've seen, but they did say this assessment will inform our actions to prepare the UK for the future, adding they've committed more than £25 billion to flood prevention, sustainable farming and habitat protection. And it's important to stress that the most extreme things are really in the worst case scenario, but the fact intelligence officers are talking in these terms is very significant.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the end of that section, but I will add also another snippet. It's the full section. It's like 10 minutes long. I hope that you do watch it. That's just sort of some of the highlights. He stressed at the end this is worst case scenario, but this was recorded before the sort of the chaos in the Middle East. And the reason that I brought this up now is because it's things like war that create even hotter and more unstable conditions for the climate that sort of advance us closer to the edge of the cliff. So what may seem unlikely, even, when this report came out at the beginning of the year, is rapidly becoming more likely the more wars we get involved in, the more oil refineries that get blown up, the more powerful weapons that are used, and the length of wars, because this relates to our national security, guys. This is why I've sort of linking this particular aspect. And for the first time ever, prior to the chaos in the Middle East, for the first time ever, biodiversity loss, which is amazing, by the way. I'm quite surprised that was even in there. It should be in there. Of course it should be in there, but I didn't think we were that advanced that we're actually adding it. The climate crisis and biodiversity loss is now being openly discussed as national security risks. Now, there's also something that it didn't touch on there. I don't think it did, but it will on the bigger version. And that's about migration, guys. Climate migration is going. It's already a factor now. People don't relate it to the climate, but believe you me, there's climate migrants now, and they are going to massively increase. And the kind of danger is that the less inhabitable our land becomes because of the way that we're poisoning, the way that war pollutes everything and whatnot, yeah, the less habitable the land is, the higher the sea rises rise. Shrinking land is going to cause issues when climate migrants come en masse, like something we have never seen before. And I spoke to Zoe Gardner last year on this. I might even link that episode in. I thought it was quite a good conversation. We have to view everybody as human beings. Nationalism cannot take root at a time when hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of human beings are going to be fleeing countries due to climate chaos that is directly connected to things like war and pollution and the climate crisis. We have to come up with a system that allows for fair travel and fair migration to places of safety for fellow human beings. And that is going to be, in my opinion, the defining point in potentially human history. If, worst case scenario, we do not get a grip on the climate crisis. Now, how do we get a grip on the climate crisis? We dismantle the fossil fuel industry utterly and completely. And we either go full renewable or nuclear or a bit of both, but we have to dismantle the fossil fuel industry, guys. And we have to come up with a fair and just international order that stops wars being fought over natural resources that we do not need, if we let the technology that can really enhance civilization, take over. If we can generate power from the sun, the wind, tidal, these sorts of things, there will not be wars over wind farms, guys. Okay? Now, there is a time scale in this, and I am absolutely shitting myself trying to do the maths, of how all this dismantling and all this injection of technologies, that renewable technologies and nuclear, if people want to go down that path, on a time scale of where we're heading with climate change. But for this particular video, I just wanted to highlight that for the first time ever, biodiversity loss and the climate crisis is now being added to serious high-level discussions in government around national security. Some of it's being kept from us, and one of the reasons that may be because they haven't got a clue right now how to solve those issues. And the more they reveal, the more questions. However, we need a full and transparent discussion around what the hell we are going to do in the near future, because it has to start. My hope is as soon as we can finish this Iranian war, the sooner Donald Trump and Netanyahu are booted out of office, some sort of sanity can take hold of this world, and maybe, just maybe, I mean, it's happened before, guys. We've not learned any lessons, but maybe, just maybe, seeing such a crisis as now, and seeing how vulnerable we are to oil, to any sort of oil crisis in a hotbed, in a part of the world that is a hotbed and susceptible for crisis after crisis, will kickstart, the renewable revolution, guys. So anyway, I'm going to leave it there. I know time is precious. Thank you so much for giving it a watch. I'm going to link in the full video have a look at that. I'll also link in the comments my chat with Zoe Gardner about climate migration. And listen, look after yourself, guys. If we survive another week, I'll see you next week.